communications, and we start with future agenda items.
We received the resolution from the community of Grand Club. It's an email requesting that we put it on as a discussion item because I think that the time allotted is so tight. It didn't get added, and so I would at this point like to suggest that we have a discussion about their resolution and some of their suggestions as a board. Do that a little bit of feedback and perhaps get a little bit of feedback from the district about the meeting that Frank Love ends up having with the district.
The next meeting, correct?
Okay.
So gathering feedback from the meeting
Right,
that
because
they have on
they're
Thursday.
slotted to have a
Right.
meeting on Thursday, and
Do you want that as a board briefing item, or do you want that as a?
I prefer to have a discussion item on it, and then the board can all hear it at once and ask some questions about it if necessary.
And is that agreeable? We talked about this, the method of adding, this is it. We add by majority vote, and I see a lot of head shaking, so we'll add that to the next meeting agenda.
In response to having 250 people here and reading everything that I have in different social media and having different parents contact me, actually prior to this 2 weeks, I've had parents contact me about different racial issues. I really think we have to get on this sooner rather than later. It's imperative, and I don't know how we do it, whether we have a board retreat, whether we have it as a discussion item, but I don't think that we can wait because we're just going to be reacting. And we've talked about it for a long time, so I'm not sure how we would want to do that.
And define what that is.
I guess my question would be, is the investigation completed?
That's why I'm asking,
Looking
defining
at-
that, because
No, the investigation is not completed. We would hope that it would be completed this week or next week, but it's not completed at this point.
So I wasn't speaking specifically to that particular issue, but the global issue that we're hearing from, I think every junior high is represented. And, you know, there are different things brought up and different things we've talked about, such as policy, the need for training. Do we have policies that aren't covering some of these things that were brought up today? Just how, as a district, are we managing these kind of issues at a broader level? I think that we need to have that discussion, whether it's a study session. I don't know that waiting until August. You know, we could start the discussion before necessarily we do our diversity training, or we could try to get someone in here sooner. But I think we're going to end up having this many, you know, a lot of people coming to every meeting because it's such a critical issue.
I wouldn't be opposed to moving up diversity training for the board to an earlier time.
So I just as part of the discussion, I have, you know, pages full of notes and trying to organize my thoughts about this. There's definitely the training, and then there's a discussion. I feel like I'd like to have as a board a good discussion about the current status, you know, current status quo, and then to talk about, maybe use that as and this is just, this isn't firm, I'm just trying to prompt a discussion about how we should move forward. Talked about the, you know, status quo, and then, so we can think about, you know, looking at procedures, looking at, you know, policy, because I know that's gonna be a very in-depth discussion. But we're talking about current state of affairs, be a good way to kick that off. Is that something we can do in a shorter time frame before for sensitivity training?
so what I'm hearing you ask for is maybe a discussion item on next step and what courses.
And I have a list of questions that I can send an email that I'm kind of curious about from the data, you know, kind of a data perspective. And if that would help form the discussion.
Well, of course, the board then doesn't get those questions.
Well, yeah, so that's, and this is part of what we were discussing, you know, like I'm curious about if we track, you know, when kids drop out, you know, if we track why, you know, there's a couple things I'm
Sort of
curious.
switching to other schools, like.
Right,
the
right,
parents
exactly. I
putting
don't-
their kids
yeah.
out and putting them to private schools.
But are they, you
Looking-
know, yeah, no, that's just one example, one quick note I saw. So it's, I'm looking more for input than saying this is how I definitely think we should go. Because like I said, I still have a ton of stuff swirling in my head, and I'm pulling with the fact that, you know, as the EDTF is such a great model with how we do really great inclusive work as a district. It's just, by its very nature, it's slow. And so, like Kimberly said, I'm looking for what you guys think in terms of.
And maybe we can have some of the administration, if we did it as a study session, I don't know if we're ready for this yet, present some of the policies that work. The things that we are doing to, not necessarily policies, but what are we doing to deal with racial, cultural tensions? And how are we managing it? And what
are things that has already been identified, maybe even at principal level, that they know that, you know, they need to improve.
So if board members have questions, it's perfectly acceptable to send questions to staff and get answers, and then when the answers come back, the information is pushed out. What is not acceptable is then to have a discussion outside the board meeting about that. So, so we still would be able to see the questions, and then that would help inform our discussions. Absolutely, it'll help us understand. Yeah.
So what would be helpful, I think, for me, for trying to respond to your needs would be if perhaps board members similar to Amy, if you could try and crystallize your thoughts, what questions you have, what information you would like to see. And if you could get that to me by Friday, so that when we meet as cabinet on Monday, we obviously have this as an agenda item. On Monday, we can begin to formulate a plan for how we can be responsive to, I mean, it seems like your first place you need to start is getting a baseline of kind of the status quo, what currently exists around the questions that you may have. And we would like to begin that work, and then we can get a study session scheduled. We're going to be pushed to find study session time, given that it's June. But I think we make it important, we'll find the time. But I think first it would be helpful for us if we could start getting a framework together of what information you'll find helpful at your policy and governance level to get at this issue.
What do you guys think?
That's fine, and I'm happy to do that. I'm very concerned, and I think we should all be concerned what we heard today and should drive us somewhere. And, you know, towards trying to make this a better learning environment and student, you know, a different environment. And so I'd also, I guess, like to have it as a discussion item because, you know, we had several community members bring up, you know, do we have an equity person here? Can we do, there were different things that don't involve this particular case that we could start discussing and talking about. We could also talk about getting a task force together, having our stakeholders involved to be able to help us.
So I think what Larry is saying is that it would help him give us information better as a component to that discussion if we tell him what we want to know. Does that make sense?
Whatever they don't want to know.
And then, well, I think each of us would articulate it in a little bit different way. And so if we are open to that, just sending information or sending requests, sending the questions that we have to Larry so that they can talk about that during cabinet. And then also put it as a discussion item on our agenda for the next meeting. And that way we'll have more information that Larry will be bringing us as well. Does that make sense?
Can I also request that as part of the team here, that you would bring that you would have some questions that you might present to us also? Because I want it to be dual, and we've all heard different things.
Right.
And not necessarily that you're asking us, but that you would bring to the cabinet also, but that we would see what those were. So all of us are, it's not just the board.
So this is being added as a discussion item on the next
For the 9th,
board,
June 9th.
on the June 9th meeting. And before that, we'll be sending in our request for
By this
information.
Friday.
And if,
We're all 6 of us going.
right, and then by the night if the investigation, how does that, yeah, I assume we can perhaps, it's conceivable that there would be an update before the night?
Yeah, I just want to caution that even though it's an investigation, everybody obviously knows it's an investigation. The results of the investigation, because it involves personal information about students, is not a document that we would be discussing or disclosing publicly. We can glean from the document information that can help us perhaps improve our policies and procedures, or if there were things we could have done differently, we can gather those. But this is not an investigation report that would be released to general public, because it's going to have personally identifiable information regarding students that would not be appropriate to share.
Don't we redact information from documents?
Redaction works with student records if you can't, there's no other way to identify the student. But in a situation like this, the students would be readily identifiable, so redaction doesn't have the effect of protecting the personally identifiable information. So it wouldn't be releasable under PURPA, certainly, and probably wouldn't be releasable under the State Public Records Act.
Can the board see it though?
That's a different issue than releasing it to the public.
So would the board have access to the findings of this?
I don't have an answer for that question.
Oh, okay, okay. Sorry, I wasn't trying to put you on the spot.
No, that's
I
okay.
thought you were,
Did that answer your question?
yeah.
I did, thank you.
Who does have that answer?
Probably want to consult with legal counsel. I mean, we're not trying to withhold information from the board, certainly, but we want to make sure that we're appropriately protecting the rights of all the students involved, including victims, perpetrators, etc. FERPA's at play, there's all kinds of federal laws and state laws that are at play here.
So to be specific, I would like to see what the recommendations are from the investigation to the district. I would like to see or hear what the district has planned in moving forward after the recommendations from the investigation.
And I think one of the themes we heard was concern about safety. So that's an immediate concern in the mind of many of the people present. So how to get at that is different than the discussion that we're having, which is an ongoing discussion, but that's a more immediate need.
I could wonder if it wouldn't be a good time to release a statement from the board superintendent addressing the concern for safety of the students.
We have done that. Certainly to the Timber Crest community, I think we've done that.
From the board?
I think it's spread a little further than Timbercrest.
We talked about that. My hesitancy is that we have an ongoing investigation, so I just would want to think about what we would want to say in the face of an ongoing investigation that isn't concluded yet.
We're going by so many laws that are sometimes in conflict with one another, that make it difficult to be as forthcoming as we would like to be.
Write it and run it by the lawyer and ask them. But we have legal counsel.
I
guess my concern is that the community believes the board is ignoring this. And so I have an issue with that, because I'm definitely not ignoring it. But from my end, there's not a whole lot of things I can do at that level. So I would like to, whatever way we can, communicate that we are trying to move forward with these things. We do, you know, you said it, we do take this seriously, and from our end, what we can do, you know, we're gonna keep this.
Would you like me to craft a letter that is from the board, that is reflective of, you know, that we are, I think that would be appropriate. Summing up some of what I've heard is what Wendy said.
Yeah, some, you know, some statements, you know, even though we're in the middle of investigations, still,
I believe the community would appreciate something. And I think that's at least something.
You even mentioned that we're going to be discussing it at our next meeting.
So yes, definitely, the people that were present tonight, I think, we can certainly notify them to let them know that that will be on the agenda for the 9th, so that they can be present
I think that's good
for the discussion,
Yeah.
and that will be part of what I will communicate.
I also had an offer of assistance from a neighbor of mine that spoke this evening, and she is a statewide diversity manager in state human resources, and her card,
Is that Shanine?
yes,
I've already emailed.
okay, good, thank you.
She can come speak with us.
I asked her to set up an appointment to talk with me so I could get a sense of what kinds of assistance or resources she might be able to bring to bear. We've already got a meeting scheduled with our cabinet group on June 8th with Nalia LaCure, who's the diversity coordinator for Puget Sound ESD. So we're reaching out. Obviously, we've got.
Things.
Yeah, actually, that's what they should communicate to the community as well.
And to, yeah. I mean, that's really good
So
information.
I'll connect with Larry and get some.
Let the community know that those connections are being made, moving toward.
She was good.
Yeah. So, just to sum up, we have, if you have questions that you want Larry, or to bring information on to the next board meeting, and get those to him by Friday. And also just kind of what you're thinking, so that it helps you know what angle we're approaching this at, because as we, we all have different perspectives. And then, so questions to Larry by Friday. Discussion item on the June 9th agenda. And in the meantime, I will write a letter. Letter to post to the website, maybe, it doesn't capture all of, it doesn't capture everyone if it's just the people in the room. All right, any other, did I miss anything in that thread before we move on? All right, next item on the agenda is board reports.
I'd like to start reports by passing and going home.
I'll
Passing.
jump on the bandwagon and pass.
How about if I ask you to submit your written reports to Cindy, if you would like them included in the minutes? Let me just touch base with a few notes.
I didn't just,
Oh,
there's
sorry.
legislative
Oh, let's just.
stuff that I feel like the board should be aware of. We have met with Representative Stanford and Senator McCullough. The session is due to end Thursday, as in the day after tomorrow. Pretty good odds that they're not going to be done by the day after tomorrow. So we will be going into most likely a second special session, which is getting towards the end of June. It's all wraps up. just keeping them all informed of how we're sort of.
I'll stay back there. All right, and I'll send it mine in writing too. Tomorrow, 7 a.m., Sandy and Dawn Scholarship Breakfast. And then all of us are scheduled to go to the PTSA brunch at 10:30. May 28th, conference call with Senator Hill. Sandy and I are signed up for that. May 29th, Representative Paulette at 10 a.m. It's only Sandy, so there's someone that wants to join her with that. Please let Cindy know. 29th?
That's this week.
Yes, this week is Friday. He is my representative for my district too. If nobody else is joking about it. Yeah. And then June 1st is our conversations with the board at Canyon Park Junior High for Latinos. And Representative Luis Moscoso does plan to attend that. Is everyone, I think Dawn, you said you were going to be out of town, is that?
I'm out of town for the first, I'm meeting on Thursday.
Okay. And everyone else is available. We had a little bit of a challenge. We had one date that was good for everybody, but that didn't work for a lot of the Latino community. And then there was another conflict, I can't remember what it was. So we've settled on the first most the next best date. And then June 4th, the staff retirement, 3:30 p.m. Kimberly, you are scheduled to, I have just a few words, and then you're scheduled to be giving a short speech there as well. And I have Amy, everybody I know will be there that's in town, so. Okay, that's the end of the business, so we'll adjourn the meeting.
Yeah, I could get from my house.
Doug was asking when I emailed you at 3:30 in the morning.
Yeah, I could get that from my house.